Good afternoon, everyone. We are together for our Erev Shabbat, Friday afternoon Torah class with Rabbi Akiva Zweig, Rosh Yeshiva at the Talmudic University of Florida. We appreciate the ongoing support of Henry and Lisa Manoucheri in their sponsorship of this Parsha Shiur. Today, the rabbi will be discussing a double Parsha, Matos and Maseh, as well as the 9 days. The topics will be conspiracies and insurrections versus core missions and identifying lies. The month of Tamuz is dedicated in memory of Doris Lombardi on the anniversary of her Yahrzeit by Brittany and Daniel Lombardi and family. In their own words, she was a loving and devoted grandmother who made us know we were her world. She lived a joy-filled and passionate life, probably loved it. She was warm and outgoing, left an impression on everyone she met, and always stressed through her words and action the beauty and importance of Judaism and Am Yisrael. Her memory and impact on our lives is a true blessing to our family. We are filled with joy and pride knowing that we are living lives in line with the values she lived and taught us. MAZAL Tov as well to Daniel and Brittany Lombardi on the birth of Shlomo Solomon ben Lev Lombardi. Shlomo Solomon Lev Lombardi. This week's class is also dedicated to Ilui Nishmas David Tzvi ben Yaakov. So after our journey of introduction, now we are going on to Matos Maseh with Rabbi Akiva Zweig.
Good afternoon, good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Also, a good Erev Rosh Chodesh. This year, Rosh Chodesh Av is falling on Shabbos, which means even though we normally talk about 9 days of restrictions, it's closer to 7 days this year. And we're going to address the theme of the 9 days momentarily. I want to talk about the title for a moment and try to explain, because I think that probably when I mention conspiracies and insurrections, we're thinking Epstein, and we're thinking what did happen with Russia Gate. And we're thinking, what about the fact that President Biden seems to not have been that present for a few years of his presidency? And then I mentioned also in the title, identifying lies. And here we are trying to figure out who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. One of the class attendees today texted me last night bemoaning the sad state of affairs that he and a good friend are seemingly on opposite sides of the issue of who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, and how difficult it is to discern nowadays. I asked one of our alumni today his thoughts about discerning lies and how to tell who is trustworthy and who is not. And his answer was, are we able to tell anymore? So this is a real difficult task. But the truth is, I'm not actually talking about these things that might have come to mind when reading the titles. I'm actually talking about the Parshiyos that we have been reading. How about Korach? How about the sin of the spies? Speaking of insurrections and lies, the Lashon Hara that was spoken about the land of Israel. And also very, very related is we have a question, I think, in this week's Parsha and last week's Parsha as well, as to the legitimacy of the request of the daughters of Tzlafchad. They approached Moshe and the leadership asking for a portion in the land of Israel, and they made claims that they were doing it on behalf of their father. Why should our father be omitted? But we could look at that story and say, wait a second, is this just a land grab? Are they just looking for property in Eretz Yisrael? And very similarly, and also in this week's Parsha, the entire tribes of Reuven and Gad, and eventually half of Menashe, approached the leadership, Moshe specifically, asking for land outside Eretz Yisrael proper, meaning on the east side of the Jordan instead of the west side, specifically because they want much more land than they would get on the west side of the Jordan. Is this motivated by, let's say, that which is good, so that there can, in fact, be enough land for their cattle, and then there will be more land, real estate, for the rest of the people that do go and inherit on the west side of the Jordan? Sorry, they asked for the east side of the Jordan, right? So is that a legitimate claim? Are they doing that for good or nefarious purposes? How do we tell? And interestingly, in both these circumstances, the Torah has a huge swath of verses dealing with both of these situations. Again, starting with Slavchad and Parshas Pinchas, and the tribes of Gad and Reuven here in Parshas Matos and Mas'eh. And what can we understand from the fact that the Torah does spend so much time on it? But also, more importantly, why were these claims ultimately legitimate when Korach's claim for asking for a position as a priest or a high priest on behalf of the people, and that other people should also have that as a claim, somehow that's illegitimate? And I think the Torah is really presenting us with fascinating case studies that hopefully can help us to determine the questions of how do we follow leadership. We have these questions in the United States of America. We have these questions in the country of Israel. We have these questions about other authoritarian figures or other world leaders. And the question is, how do we tell? What do we do about conspiracies and insurrections? And we're going to get into core missions and identifying lies. So what I would like to propose is that if the Torah spends so much time on these Parshiyos, we obviously have something to learn, and specifically that if it's coming here towards the conclusion of the life of Moshe Rabbeinu, and specifically at the end of Sefer B'Midbar, of this fourth volume of the Torah, there is a very keen message in it, because this ultimately is the transition point from when we go wandering in the desert into entering a homeland where self-governance is ultimately going to be much more necessary, being that we will no longer have Moshe as the leader, and we will also not have the miracles of the desert kind of coddling us and taking care of us every step of the way. So we are entering the phase of needing to figure out leadership and self-governance, and ultimately a way to be able to carry forward whatever it is that Hashem wants us to do. So I would like to suggest the following formula. And let me just mention one more brief introductory point. In the last few Parshios, we have been discussing in great detail Pinchas, Korach, the daughters of Slavchad. And what I always find amazing about the Torah is that even though I think we've hit upon very fundamental and profound truths, and that this is what the story is saying, there's always so much more that the story is saying. And that when, in fact, we feel like we've hit upon the truth, I think a very good litmus test, and we're going to be using that phrase today, a very good litmus test of the truths that we discover is that they will not contradict the future truths that we discover. And in fact, they will only further to deepen, as well as serve as an overlay or a deeper layer of the truths that we have already hopefully discovered. So I think that an excellent point to be made about both the daughters of Slavchad and the children of Gad and Reuven is that in both those cases, they had a real consequence to their claim. In the case of the daughters of Slavchad, this is not as well known, although we did mention it on Wednesday. In the case of the daughters of Slavchad, they were not merely asking for land, they were also coupling that with a claim that said, look, if in fact we are not entitled to land because only a son can inherit land and our father has passed and a daughter does not inherit land, then it should be that we don't count as his children. Because after all, the concept of a bequest of inheritance and legacy is that their family and the identity of the ancestors should live on through the children. And if you're saying that daughters cannot accomplish that even when there are no sons, then our mother should be able to get married again to one of the brothers of our dead father. That's the way the Talmud explains their claim. So they were not simply saying, look, give us land or we're upset. They were saying there should be a way to rectify the legacy of our father, either through us, his daughters, or through his wife, that she could remarry and be able to perhaps have other children. Now, whether that was so possible or not is not the point. The point is that they were not simply asking for something, they were living by the claim that they made. In a similar fashion, when it comes to the children of Gad and Reuven, they were not simply saying, give us land, even though it sounded like it, because Moshe Rabbeinu immediately responds to them with, wait a second, isn't this what the spies did when they said, oh, we don't really want to go into Eretz Yisrael, and eventually they made a self-proclamation of let us return to Egypt, let us go back to Egypt. Okay, so instead of going back to Egypt, we'll call it Syria or Jordan or any other country outside the land of Israel. Even Uganda has been proposed, as we know. Is this not what, in fact, your brothers did? This is what Moshe tells them. To which Moshe says, look, and the people actually say, just give me 1 second and get that for you. This is chapter 32, sentence 5, when they say, please let us inherit this land over here. Don't take us over the Jordan River. Moshe says to them, why are you swaying wickedly the heart of the people? This is what your ancestors did. And they went and they spied and got angry, and then they weren't able to go into the land. And you're doing the same thing. Moshe spends about 9 sentences saying that to them. And they respond with, look, this was their suggestion. This was not even Moshe's suggestion. Moshe said simply, is this just a land grab? Is this just a way for you to not cross over the Jordan, not fight the war? And they said, no, God forbid. Our children will stay here. Our cattle will stay here. We will go and fight with the rest of the brothers until we get the rest of the land conquered together with our brothers. We will not return to our homes until each Jew inherits his portion. That's what you call a litmus test, people. And in fact, from here, it's fascinating. From here, we learn all conditions in the Talmud. A condition has to be a double-sided condition to be ironclad. If this, then this, and if that, then that. You need to have both sides of the equations. So over here, they're saying we only get land if we conquer the land in Israel first. If we conquer the land first, we get the land. If we do not conquer the land first, we do not get the land on the east side of the Jordan. And so Moshe very reasonably says, okay, if this is what you do, so it shall be. And that's what happens. And again, many sentences are spent on this, and the half of the tribe of Menashe is included as well. And ultimately, they do get the land that was the land of Sichon, the Amorite king, and the kingdom of Og, the king of the Bashan. And they built up the land on the east side of the Jordan. So here it is. Why does Moshe not simply say, oh, no, you guys, I don't trust you guys. Oh, no, you guys are good guys. Why doesn't he say that to the daughters of Salach? Oh, I've been with you guys for 40 years. You daughters have been very exemplary. You have excellent character references. You passed the smell test. I trust you. Or the same thing with the children of Gad and the children of Reuven. Oh, yeah, listen, I know you guys to be good guys. You didn't give us problems in the desert, even though definitely some of the tribe of Reuven did, right? Why doesn't Moshe talk about either character credibility or character assassination, which is what everybody does in the world today? Because people, leadership is not about how big a tzaddik or how big a rasha the person is. Leadership is about Is it good governance or not? Can the leader sacrifice for the sake of the good governance or not? And does his policies and his action fit the mission that is the mission? So in order for there to be good governance, in order for there to be good leadership, the question is not if the person is a good guy or a bad guy. The question is, what is the mission? Moshe Rabbeinu knows what the mission is. The mission is inherit Eretz Yisrael as tribes. Each tribe is supposed to get a portion because God told him that, because Yaakov set up the Jewish people by tribes, because the identities of the Jewish people are defined by their tribe and their ability to work together as a nation, including all the tribes. Moshe Rabbeinu knows the mission. Moshe Rabbeinu never loses sight of the mission. So when you get somebody like Korach, and Korach says, hey, all the Jews should have equity. We should include everyone. DEI. Everyone should be entitled to what everybody has. Is that the mission of the Jewish people? Or is the mission of the Jewish people that each person has a unique identity in place? What is the mission of the Jewish people? Is the mission of the Jewish people that each person should be blended to be like the other person, or that each person needs to focus on their area, on their talents, and their mission, and then be able to work together? Now, incredibly, Moshe Rabbeinu gave Korach a lot of attention. And he was willing to do very much to make peace with Korach and Dasan and Aviram, even after the Dasan and Aviram said, if you poke out our eyes, we're not going to go talk to you. Moshe still, even after he sent the message, he walks to their camp to talk to them. Maybe they'll talk to him. Because throughout all the years of the desert, Korach and Dasan and Aviram did not stage an insurrection or a rebellion. They spoke out their complaints. And if you work within the government and you are willing to communicate your different viewpoints, that's fine. That's called working together. But the minute that you stop working together and what you're seeking in the name of equality actually undermines the fundamental mission, you're out. You're out. That does not work. And it was not about Moshe Rabbeinu saying, oh, Korach, he's such a bad guy. Hashem, he's such a terrible guy. He's such a Rasha. He's saying all these terrible things. Or Dasan and Aviram, they're so bad. They don't pass the smell test. They're full of chicanery. For all we know, this is just a coup. No. Is it in the mission? Is it good for the Jewish people? Is it good for the mission that Hashem has given the Jewish people or not? And the same thing happens with Slavchad and the children of Gad and Reuven. They come to Moshe with a request. Moshe knows the answer or Moshe doesn't know the answer. Either way, Moshe is willing to talk about it. But fundamentally, Moshe knows that the only thing that can possibly work is if the daughters are truly interested in the identity of their father and the identity of the tribe, as is part of the plan of conquering Eretz Yisrael, okay, then there's what to talk about. It can be legitimate, but only if they also are willing to say, look, it's only about the mission. It's not about us because we don't even need the land. If we don't get the land, fine, but give our mother and our tribe the opportunity to inherit the land. And then Moshe even does further and gives them a recommendation, which is sort of a litmus test, to marry within their tribe. They didn't ask to marry within their tribe. Moshe says, yeah, you get the land, but you need to marry within the tribe. Now, ultimately, the Talmud says, as we mentioned on Wednesday, that was only a good recommendation. The rest of the girls did need to marry within the tribe because Moshe did demand that the rest of them pass the litmus test because they were not as altruistic necessarily as the daughters of Slavchad. And that's the formula. The formula that I'm suggesting is if you want to know about good governance, you need to have a clarified mission. And that clarified mission needs to be one that is moral and ethical and is truly just for all the constituents. And again, justice does not mean everybody is treated the same. It means that everybody has a just place in the system. And then the actions need to follow the mission, right? The policies, the ideas, the changes need to follow the mission. And ideally, the leader will be able to pass a litmus test of, is it about the mission? Is it about the nation? Is it about the country, the people, or is it about me? When that kind of a litmus test can be passed, you have the right leadership. So that's the formula that I'm suggesting. Now, I decided to do a little experiment and look up in ChatGPT the following question, because I was curious, what does artificial intelligence have to say about conspiracies and good governance versus bad governance? And specifically, the question that I asked is, what is the opposite of conspiratorial and bad governance? What's the opposite of that? And here's the opposite of conspiratorial according to AI: transparent, open, inclusive, trustworthy, participatory, democratic. Now, there's no question everybody's trying to sell themselves as though they fit that bill. And it's just a question of how good they are with the words. Are they transparent? Are they open? Are they inclusive? Are they trustworthy? Are they participatory? Are they democratic? Yeah, that's what politicians do. They try to present that way. What I'm suggesting is that that's not the issue. The most important thing you need to know about your leaders is, what is your mission? That's why the Declaration of Independence is so important. What is the mission? What is America standing for? What does Israel stand for? What do the leaders say? Now, one of the things that most Jews think about the state of Israel is to guarantee the survival of the Jewish people. And I say that's wrong. It's very wrong. God already promised our survival. Now, is it a good tool in the 21st century to have a safe haven for the Jews? 100%. But is that the mission of the Jewish people? No, it's not. The mission of the Jewish people is to live by example to the rest of the world that God exists and the universal truths of the Torah are for all people, called the Noahide laws. That's the mission of the Jewish people. We need the Jewish people to survive. We need to fight for our survival, unfortunately, and we shouldn't roll over, but that's not the mission. The mission is to live as God's ambassadors to the world, which means that everything that Israel does needs to reflect that. So I think that this is a great example of artificial intelligence versus real intelligence and the Torah. The real definition of good governance, or the opposite of conspiratorial, is not only that the people are trustworthy and open, and by the way, inclusive is also not a great word nowadays, but it's that they know the mission, that the mission is the truth of why that government or that country was established, and they show how what they are doing is in line with that mission, and ideally they're able to pass the litmus test, not I promise, I promise, I promise, which everybody knows in the campaign trail, those promises are garbage. No, it's, can they pass the litmus test of living for the mission of the people? And there's no coincidence that the Torah concludes Sefer B'Midbar with this, because the reason that we end up 40 years in the desert and all the journeys that are spoken about at the beginning of Parshas Matos instead of chick-chack into the land of Israel is because when the spies came to convince the Jews not to go into the land of Israel, the Jews didn't sit there and say, wait a second, is that in line with our mission? Wait a second, are you interested in your own leadership, or you're interested in what's important for the Jews? How does this fit in with going into the land of Israel? Show me the strategic plan that this is going to get us into the land of Israel like God told us we're supposed to do. Where's the plan that God promised our forefathers that they all knew that God's redeeming them to inherit the land flowing with milk and honey. How is that within the mission? We didn't even ask the question. And that's why we have Tisha B'Av again and again and again. That's why we continue to suffer. Because every time the leadership comes up with a proposal, hey guys, I have a really good idea for you. We're not asking as a nation if that's within the mission. But Moshe insists on, is it within the mission for the daughters of Tzlafchad and for the children of Gad and Reuven? And that's the Torah's way of saying, you want to get into the land of Israel, you better get laser focused on the national mission and demand that from your leadership. So when Pinchas comes and he says, wait a second, Moshe, aren't we doing anything about this guy Zimri and this non-Jewish woman Cosby? And Moshe says, what are we supposed to do? And Pinchas remembers, and Moshe says, okay, you're right, go carry it out. First of all, Pinchas works within the system. He's not looking to just overthrow it for a cause, which is what Zimri was actually trying to do. And he takes responsibility. He puts himself on the line. I call that a litmus test. That's a litmus test. Are the leaders willing to have skin in the game? Are the Jews willing to have skin in the game? But do the Jews know the mission is the first question. If we want to stop being the wandering Jews, we just need to remember the mission, which we read in the Haggadah, which is all over the Torah, which is all over our tradition. And we can't forget that that's what it's all about. So what many of us wonder is, how did the Jews not get that, Bibi is doing what's good for the Jews because we need a secure land of Israel? And that's true, but I'm sorry, gentlemen, that's just not the main point. The main point is, what is the overall mission of the Jewish people? People don't talk about it. Who in government is talking about, this is the mission of the United States of America? This is what I'm doing to further the mission of the United States of America. This is what I'm doing as Prime Minister of Israel to further the mission of Israel and the Jewish people. And this applies to our lives. Every time a parent makes a rule, well, what is the purpose that the family is trying to accomplish? Every time that a head of a company tries to make a rule, well, what is the purpose of the company? And how is it in line with the mission? And can we argue about if this should be the mission? Can we talk about what the mission ought to be? Can we gain a consensus of what it ought to be? It's one of the reasons that the Declaration of Independence is a very worthwhile read, because it talks about the mission of the United States of America. Who's living in line with that mission? And if you are, fantastic. That's what the government was set up to be. And as Ohad Shadida pointed out to me just a few minutes ago, there's even a provision in the Constitution that if the government is not living up to the mission, it should be overthrown. But in the meantime, we don't talk about what is the mission and how are the policies getting us to the mission. We talk about, is it going to be a financially stable world or a non-financially stable world? We talk about the good guys need to overcome the bad guys. That's not what it's about. It's about what is the mission, what is the cause, and that the litmus tests of the leadership and the proof is in the pudding is the formula. So can the leaders pass the litmus tests? Do the decisions follow the mission? And ultimately, are the decisions being made based on first principles, as our Yehuda just posted? To me, this is not at all complicated. The reason it's so hard to get to is because people don't really want to talk about mission, because mission requires sacrifice. It requires work. There is no simple solution. It requires sometimes like a revolution like happened in 1776. Sometimes it requires not having the money to spend on many things that we want to spend. Being in line to a mission is ultimately a service and a calling. And people are avoiding that like the plague, as we know. So to me, if we could do a much better job helping ourselves know our family mission, our companies knowing our business mission, our institutions knowing the institutional mission, the Jewish people knowing the Jewish mission, and hopefully good governments governments that are truly advocating for justice and liberty, knowing that that's their mission, and then implementing and proposing new ideas and decisions based on those values. And I think that that's why the Torah concludes Sefer B'Midbar specifically with so much discussion of the travels of these people, because ultimately what Hashem is saying is that in order for there to be a successful governance in Eretz Yisrael, you need leaders who understand the mission. You need the people that are willing to abide by the mission. You need people that are willing to sacrifice for the mission. Imagine for a moment that the girls that inherited the land of Israel, that had no father, didn't want to marry members within their tribe. You know, for most people, that would be, what do you mean? You can't tell me who I should love and who I should marry and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a mission here. You're going to need to sacrifice for the mission. Just like so many of our ancestors sacrificed so that we could have freedom or education or some money, right? That was sacrifice because they had a cause and they had a mission. And so I think that if we can really hone in on what our missions ought to be, our decisions and our implementations of ideas should become much more clear, and it should be much easier to tell if we have appropriate leadership or not. Questions or comments?
I see a comment from Leonard Horowitz in the chat about sublimating people's personal interests. Maybe you can give us a little more insight in how we can go about that.
Yeah, sure. So that's very much hitting the nail on the head, Dr. Horowitz, and we have a hard time with that in our society. For decades now, everything has been instant gratification. Everybody knows that healthier food takes longer to prepare. Hence, nobody bothers. Not nobody, but very few people, right? Everybody knows that to build something that will really last will take a much longer time. Okay, again, people don't really bother. Yes, Dr. Horowitz, you want to speak? Please.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak because I didn't think I could really add much to it, but just even the Declaration of Independence and Israel and everything like that, the mission is very much, we don't want people telling us, we don't want the people telling us what to do who we don't want telling us what to do. The Declaration of Independence says we don't want the British government telling us what to do, so we want to do it ourselves. Israel, you know, I can't say I disagree with them, but we don't want other countries saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to get out of here, you got to live in certain parts. We don't want people telling us what to do, so we want a place where nobody's going to tell Jews what to do. So that's, you know, it's a certain necessity. A person can't do much if he has somebody besides Hashem telling him what to do, and he has to abide by it. And it's very, but with the Declaration of Independence, it was, yeah, well, God gave us the right to do what we want to do rather than to the kings to tell us what to do. So it's a very...
Yeah, so the problem is, and really Ari Marinelli is hitting on this point also. I want to talk about that for a second, then I'll go right to Dr. Patterson. The problem is that human beings are very difficult in long-term trust situations because it's too easy. Let me just put it on mute again. It's too easy for people to fall into the trap of telling people what to do. So in Israel today, okay, we don't have, let's say, so many non-Jews telling us what to do inside the land of Israel. We've got plenty of Jews telling Jews what to do, right? And that could be harder by many people's, estimations. So I think what the critical point is that the idea of liberty is not without justice, and justice is a hard thing to capture, and it takes a lot of work. And ultimately, it's the best justice is the one that Hashem tells us what is justice. And so I just wanted to start with that, and then Ari Marinelli is pointing out that he finds it hard to say that President Trump lives up to these has a unified vision. He seems to do sporadic things, and I think that that's exactly the point. I don't want to be coming out on this class in general on politics, and I think what I'm saying here is this needs to be everybody's standard for whichever leader, and we should be holding them accountable for exactly that. And if we can get a better clarified vision, if you think we need it, then that's what we got to do, right? If we want to see how the policies align more, that's what we got to do. Anyways, I just want to make those points. Dr. Patterson, please.
Thank you, Rabbi. As always, amazing. There's some teachings here, again, run very deep, and they're very Jewish, if I may say. The statement that we won't rest until every Jew inherits his portion, that underscores what it means to be Am Yisrael. Each Jew is responsible for every other Jew. It's not about me. In Jewish teaching, there is no teaching concerning individual salvation. You know, the Christian will ask you, are you saved? Whether I'm saved or not, I don't know, and I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned with Am Yisrael. And indeed, as you say, with all of humanity, we are chosen to be a blessing to all nations, as Abraham Avinu. And it's not about me, as you said. Justice is not about me. Ethics, morality, none of it is about me. And it's not about what's in it for me or what's going to happen to me. Achariyut, responsibilities, acher, other-oriented. It's other-oriented. And just one more brief note. Two more. When the temple stood, there was a court for the Gentiles, right? They could come. This is unheard of in ancient times, and the religious observances of ancient times, like many other things, are unique about the Jewish people. And I just want to mention in the Declaration of Independence, God is invoked 4 times. The God of nature, the creator, the supreme judge, and divine providence. This is not the French Revolution. Totally not the French Revolution. The Americans didn't want to kill the king. They wanted to be free from unjust taxation without, the grievances. And the Declaration lays out the grievances. But they're not out to commit regicide, which is a form of deicide. It's killing the God who anoints the king. Anyway, so this is the Declaration of Independence is I think, a unique document in human history. It is extraordinary. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, awesome. That was fantastic. Really, really appreciate it. It's funny. Achariyut, I had a different take on it just last night, but I love that one too. Yes. Aaron Yehuda.
I just want to say how wonderful it is to be a part of this group and to hear the amazing insights everybody brings. With you setting the tone, Rabbi. I just had a couple of thoughts on personal interest and the concept of sublimating or controlling a person's personal interests. And I think what I see from this journey, and I think the Baal Shem Tov says it too, is that every step of the way, apparently what we do is we think we have a personal interest that emerges to the surface. And what we learn at the end of the journey as we look back is that none of those things were really important and may not have been in our personal interest. So I don't know if it's so much about controlling a person's personal interest, or knowing what's actually in our personal best interest.
Being able to discern what's in our best interest.
And I think that maybe when you look back and you take a big picture like this, and hopefully we can learn from it, is to look at what's actually in our personal best interest at the end of the day, as they say. And again, many of us say that to make life better, people say that the journey is the destination. So since we're kind of in our journey, maybe we should already know so we can experience the destination while we struggle by knowing what's in our personal actual best interest.
Excellent points. Really, I think what you're saying, Rabbi, I'll get to you 1 second. You're saying that sometimes our personal best interest really requires sacrifice, and that's we have to get to know that. Yeah.
It's like having a small operation to avoid a big disease.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's good. That's good. Very good. Thank you, Rabbi.
Just to add, to bring proof to this whole pudding is very easy, because when Moshe Rabbeinu was told that you're going to become the nation, I'm going to raise the other nations. So what Moshe Rabbeinu did at that point, he says, oh no, take me out of the book, but I'm sticking up for the Jewish people. And that's the message. A leader has to be always ready to sacrifice himself for the Jewish people. So that's what I felt this whole speech is the most important thing. And we know the reason that he had to do that, because this week the Yahrzeit from the Holy Riyah Kodesh, he says he was Noach, Gilgal from Noach. When the Mabul came, he just stood for himself. And this is what the whole message was given here. That is the message, that a leader has to not to sacrifice himself to be standing up for the nation, even if they did the worst thing at an eagle. That's the only thing I just want to add.
Good. Very good. Really, that's a well said. It's a good proof. Shar kochacha. Dr. Finkelstein, I don't know if you can hear, but I would. Oh, Noah's okay. We're going to get to you, Noah, in a second. But Dr. Finkelstein just mentioned to me yesterday that he reread a speech of mine from Oxford in 2000. I think 19, but I went back and looked myself. There is the 2017 version. If anybody has the chance to go to Rabbi Akiva Zweig, Oxford 2017, it's about an hour and 40 minutes. You skip about the first 45 minutes, which is introductions, maybe even the first hour, close to the hour. And I would like everybody to hear that, but also to hear the questions at the end, because we have to get on board with what our Jewish mission is. We have to get on the same page with that. So I would just strongly recommend that. Dr. Finkelstein, should we go to Noah, or you want to go first? Noah, you're up.
Okay, just a quick comment on this idea of discernment. It got me questioning if that's not like 99% of what a leader has to have, because even if one is actually selfish, I think it would be hard to disentangle, like, you actually, even if you're selfish, need to have the opportunity to help other people and need to be aligned with the mission, because if you're thinking long term as opposed to short term, like, I think a lot of the mistakes that we make are just like mistakes in discernment, really. A person who really wants the best for even themselves, like, has to think long term. And so that doesn't mean at eating the extra brownie, or like, would you rather be Qatar or Kuwait, who happen to subsist on, they just are sitting on a bunch of oil and didn't have to do anything to earn it? Or would you rather be Israel, that is surrounded by enemies, is like the only country in the Middle East with no oil, and has therefore earned for itself the distinction of, being really overrepresented in almost everything that matters. So I'm really curious about, like, discernment versus intention for a leader. And I almost think, like, if you're smart enough, then where does intention come in?
I'm not sure I understood. If you're smart enough, where does intention come in? Everything else I thought I understood, and I want to
because if you were truly really smart and just wanted the best for yourself, wouldn't you understand that doing the best for others would ultimately redound to your benefit? And wouldn't you understand that you were not fulfilling your own mission on this earth, even by pursuing, like, short-term hedonistic goals? That would not only be bad for others, but it would also end up being bad for yourself. So I'm just wondering, like, is there any, like, intention or altruism that needs to come in on top of just the knowledge that that is true?
Okay. Yeah. No. Excellent points. Very, very much to the heart of the issue, and this is Aaron Yehuda is referring to this as well. The ability to know what's actually really good for us. And I do think that genuinely selfish or narcissistic people struggle mightily with the short term versus the long term. And the longest term that they ever think of is this lifetime. They delude themselves into believing they'll be able to achieve their goals for their entire lifetime, even though most of the time that too is not really a reasonable estimation. And the reason that they have such a hard time with it is because exactly what you're saying, thinking long term restricts me from doing what I really want to do. The best example is if you'll just count to 5 before you get angry. Okay, but who does that? Everybody knows that, but who does that? Nobody does that, right? Because even though you're correct on some level that they should know, if they only act in their short-term interest, then their governance won't be enduring, or they won't convince the people, whatever it is, right? What they do is they set themselves up to say, okay, I just need to be this patient until this point, and then I can do whatever I want, and they don't think beyond that because they're just going to be doing whatever they want. So I don't think that most people that have resigned themselves to doing whatever they want are truly able to think in the genuine long-term paradigm.
What she wants me to do.
Does someone else want to say something? Daphne, what do you think? I mean, Noah, what do you think about
Rabbi.
that? Yeah, just let
I
me.
think it's.
Yeah.
I think it's. I think we can't win thinking that we can actually discern. I think you have already mentioned this, and we keep stressing this. It's what direction you're going. Where are you going? What are your intentions? The discernment, that's part of our conversation with ourselves, our sometimes heated problems with others. But as we've seen throughout history and in the Torah, and right now, it's where are we going? What do we want to do? So I don't think we should be worried so much about the discernment, because there's always going to be another way to look at it. What we should just keep focused is what direction we're going.
Yeah, but you have to clarify it. And if you do, the truth is, if you really clarify what direction or your mission is, then the discernment becomes built in.
That's what I said, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it's you have to clarify the mission and the direction, and
okay.
the discernment it's already there. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
You can argue blue and face about it, but and people might have different ways of getting there, and that and it should be, but it's the direction and what we mean and what we're doing.
Okay. Sounds good. Dr. Finkelstein, anything or anybody else before we go? Yeah.
Rabbi, just a question. Oh.
Okay, Rebuto, go ahead.
I just want to ask a question, because if we realize we started the Torah by Nasa V'Nishma, we didn't know the mission we were ready to do. So I'm not sure if we have to know a mission. We just have to know what we're asked. We have to do it, even if we don't understand the mission.
Hashem told us the mission.
Yeah, right. But we did after we said Nasa.
No. Hashem told us the mission before. Before we.
Yeah, but that's not the mission. That's a factor of exalting you. That's all.
That's what I said. No, that is the mission. The mission is to be a kingdom of servants to Hashem.
But we don't know how. The mission
how
is how.
Is a different thing. But that is the mission.
So we said we're going to do exactly. So we said we're going to do it without knowing it's going to be hard. We might have to hold Shabbos, whatever it is. So we see that sometimes.
One second. Knowing how is very different than knowing the mission. You have to have the mission first. How is another question. But you have to commit to the mission.
So you're saying the mission was Mamlechus Khan V'Goy Kodesh?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to think about that. Right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Everyone else good? Anyone else?
Can I ask?
Oh, yes.
For today?
I cannot.
An upraised hand from Daphne, Rabbi.
I'm happy to do something next week. What was that?
I see an upraised hand from Daphne.
Oh, okay.
No, I just didn't put it down.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on my mission.
Awesome.
Can I ask one more quick clarifying point that I don't think I was clear with? So
please.
I think what I'm really trying to figure out is there a difference between evil and stupidity? Because I mean, there has to be, right? But I'm not really understanding what it is, because if you were a very, very intelligent, but quote unquote evil person, meaning you only wanted good for yourself, you would still understand that ultimately, to your point, if you're thinking long term and if you're thinking beyond this life, you would understand, even if you were purely selfish, that it is not good for you to be purely selfish. So in that sense, is stupidity the main problem? And is that why the main commandment in life essentially is learning and education?
So,
Because
wow, there's a lot to that. So the first thing is that you
No.
should know that the rabbis say that nobody sins unless a spirit of stupidity enters them. Okay, that's literally the expression in the rabbis. But I do think that your question about being stupid versus being evil is a very important one, because stupid people, basically, they're giving up on themselves, and evil people are trying to implicate other people in the process. I think evil is really where they're trying to take down other people, control other people, get other people to sin, all of that. I think that's where evil really comes in.
but all
Well,
of that would be futile, because if there's a God, you can't possibly think to win against God and his plan. So
Yeah, so
either you, yeah.
yeah, so, yeah. Go ahead.
What's the best baby Jim?
Dr. Finkelstein?
Oh, well, I was going to say that there's often in authoritarian regimes a kind of division of labor between people
Well,
who
you don't want to go to bed.
am I in a bad spot? Can you guys not hear me?
1 second. Give me 1 second. If you don't mind, I'm going to mute everyone again, and then unmute yourself, please, Dr. Finkelstein.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, there's often kind of a division of labor when it comes to revolutionary ideas or authoritarian regimes. You have people who tend not to have much agency, who are pretty dumb, kind of at the bottom of the pyramid, and then you have psychopaths who I think, and some psychopaths were dumb too, but you sometimes have people that can buck the curve and be kind of brilliant and capable and see a whole picture and still have a self-annihilatory instinct, even though they see the whole picture. So if you Parshiyos ago, we talked about Elam as an example of this. Like, this is a guy who can talk to God. He's literally inspired by visions. But his focus is very different than that of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's not for a lack of knowledge that focus is distinct. It's a preference, right? So where you have that much insight, it's very haunting to trace that for us, because the encounter with malevolence is befuddling. It's like, how could somebody have all that insight and make that choice? That's especially nihilistic, because most of us don't even have that much insight, right? So it's really haunting to meet people like that. It's actually the encounter with malevolence, for that reason, when people encounter it, it tends to be it can provoke a religious experience. Because then we have to reach for resources to encounter that, right? And we have to be able to envision something so horrible as that. That's exactly how we overcome it. So I think that like, is there a folly there? There is. I mean, there is a folly there, but it's a knowing folly, right? And the word folly is not. It feels less descriptive when it comes to people like that. It is still. I mean, it's obviously self-annihilatory, but it's willful. So I think that's the distinction between people that have like low locus of control. They can't control themselves. They may know better, but it doesn't matter. Versus people who are very willful. It's often division of labor between those two things. At the limit, those things are both foolish, but one is not entirely akin to the other.
I love that expression, self-annihilatory, and I think you're right that it is haunting people to have that much insight and to be that self defeating. It is amazing to meet people like that. Yeah,
and yet that's the source of Mashiach, right? That's also like where we get our first Mashiach. So those things are actually related to them as well.
What do you mean?
I mean that Elam. There's a reason that Elam is the guy who gives us our first sight of Mashiach.
Right, because he knows the ultimate truth.
That's the point. And not only that, to some extent, the people that are that willful, that is a kind of religious experience for them too. I mean,
because
is like
saying,
sacrificing 70 bulls.
Yeah. So look, I'll just live for as long as I can, enjoy whatever I can. That's what I choose. That's what I choose. To live with my own lusts and temptations for as long as I can.
Yeah. So awesome.
That seems like where we are in this world, unfortunately.
Some people are, but the good news is we have the Jews, and we're not going away, and we're going to make a difference. Ari, please, do you want to say something, Ari? Please.
Yeah, this reminds me of the piece by Rav Shimon Shkup, where he talks about, when you're a child, you're kind of to some extent a limited person, and then your anochi, your sense of self becomes expanded, and you notice you have a mother, and then you notice that, okay, my purview of concern is just not myself. It's much more expanded, and it expands to my family, it expands to my community, and then he says ultimately, the Jewish people and then the world. So I think that what it's not a contradiction. It's in your best interest, but it's an expanded sense of self, and it expands to the people in the world are become my concern, or other people around me become my concern, and also I'm not limited just by time too. I'm not just concerned about the satisfaction I'm going to get at the moment, but I'm an expanded person, and my purview of concern goes out to the future too. So it's in all areas you become a greater and not a small person.
Yeah, that's esoteric, but it's beautiful, and yeah, I think you're right. I think being a part of the greater whole means to care about the greater whole, and to sacrifice for that. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, excellent. Okay, everybody's great discussion. Love to be with all of you. A great Shabbos, Gary. We love it when you come. Come every week, okay? All right, good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.